Hi, thanks for joining us. I'm going to just show a basic halfback nymph. In this case it'll be a pheasant tail nymph, and we'll show you how easy it is to tie, how to set your proportions on your materials, and how to manipulate your materials. So I just have a standard wet fly hook mounted in the vise in a size 8. Normally I would tie these in 10s, 12s, 14s, and I'm just going to mount up some 12-0 wax thread. One of the things to pay attention to when you're tying nymphs and small nymphs is make sure you have the right size thread. 8-0 sometimes can be too large, although it's considered a standard for many regions, but I find that if you can come down to a 12-0 or even an 18-0, it's just easier to work with and a lot easier to maintain proportions, and certainly will have a smaller head. So I'm just going to do touching turns here down the hook shank to the top of the bend, which is somewhere between the point and the barb for those people who are using barbed hooks. And I'll take 3 pheasant tail fibers, and this is a picric acid dyed pheasant tail. You can tie these in black with black pheasant tails. You can tie them with greens, olives, yellows, oranges. You can use different pheasants such as Lady Amherst or even golden pheasant tail. It's up to you. So we know that on a halfback nymph the tail should be body length, and body length is a measure from the top of the bend to 2/3 of the way down the hook shank, because your thorax is the front 1/3. So I find quite often people will make nymphs with the tails a little too long, but if we measure off these 3 fibers, and whether it's 2/3 of the way from the front of the hook to the back, or from the back of the hook to the front, 2/3 is 2/3. So I'm just going to measure off 2/3 this way to the back. So I've got it pinched. I'll lay it in place, reposition with my left hand, and do 1 or 2 wraps. Now we'll add a wire. Typically copper wire is used, but a silver wire or gold wire can be used, whatever a person prefers. And in this case I'm going to run a 2mm wire, such as this here. And we'll just take off a small piece about 4 to 5 inches long, and I will offer it to the side with 1 turn. Again, if we look at where this body material or the wire terminates, it's going to be 2/3 of the hook shank. So what I'm doing is utilizing both the wire and the taper on the pheasant tail material to begin to increase my body, and I'm not going to create a lump by cutting anything off in the back that we'll have to work around later as we're building the nymph. So again, come up, touching turns, right up to where the wire terminates or ends. Remove the extra pheasant tail nymph, or the pheasant tail material. Now I'm going to take the longer pheasant tail fibers, and we'll grab about 5 to 6. I'll pull it to 90 degrees, remove it from the quill. And now I'm going to offer it in by the tips at the front here, again utilizing the taper that we have of the pheasant tail. And as we wrap back, yes, it will increase in size, but when we wrap the pheasant tail material forward, it will have a natural taper that the material will create. And again, bring it up forward, terminate the front end of the body. Okay. So now you can either run by hand or use a set of hackle pliers if you like to manipulate the pheasant tail material. Both will work well. I give it a bit of a spin, pardon me, a clockwise spin, not a counterclockwise spin, so that when we wrap, it makes a nice uniform body with a natural taper in it as the material becomes thicker. Lift this to the 90-degree position. We'll do one turn behind it, second turn behind it, and then I'll do locking turns, one in front, one behind, one in front, one behind, and do a half hitch over top of all this, laying it all down in place. And then you can either tear away or take your scissors, a pair of flat or even curved scissors, and just snip away the excess. Now we want to build our wing case. Or actually, sorry, now we're going to wrap our wire. I'll do a full turn at the back. And now do palmering turns, evenly spaced, moving forward. And almost always we'll try to put 5 turns into a body section on a nymph, regardless of size. Sometimes it'll be 7. Sometimes 9, but certainly 5 gives it a nice proportion. And if you notice, it did turn behind, turn in front. Now we can helicopter off the wire. Now we're going to take our pheasant tail again, and we're going to pull 10 to 12 barbules. We'll bring them off to the side, match the tips up, and then tear that away. Now I'll build a small clump with this, and all my tips should be relatively close to being matched. What I'll do is, from the front of the hook, I'll measure back with the hackle tip, or the pheasant tail tips, halfway down the body, which is roughly where we want these to terminate when they're tied in, plus 1 thorax length. So once we've managed to measure that off, now I'll just do touching turns, moving forward. Keep the pheasant tail on top. And now we can either tear away or again remove with a pair of scissors the excess pheasant tail fiber. Again, the thorax on a pheasant tail nymph, North American style, the trough style, is done with peacock herl. And I like to take a peacock herl from the eye, near the front of the eye, or near the bottom of the eye, where the barbules are a little thicker, a little fuller. It just gives a nice shape to the pheasant tail. And again, we're only running 2 barbules. We'll pinch back about 1 inch of material, get into where it's a little thicker or a little heavier. And again, the herl has a natural taper to it, being fairly thick at the back end, tapering down to the front end. And we will offer this on the side, shiny side towards me, and go back with touching turns, and now we'll come forward with touching turns, which is also an additional layer of thread that has built up a small amount of thorax section. Now we can take the peacock herl and with touching turns move it forward. And if you look at how the herl comes in, you can see that it lays back towards the rear of the hook with every turn. And we'll tie that off, keep it to 90, a full turn, a full turn and back, a full turn in front, and again we'll interlock this material with our thread and half hitch. This locks everything down, maintains the tension on the herl, makes it a pretty solid fly. Now we're going to build the wing case and our legs, and this will all be roughly done at the same time. Again, we'll pull all the pheasant tail material forward, and I will flatten it out to spread it. For the wing case, do a full wrap. I'll have a good look at it. It needs to be moved a little bit, manipulate with my fingers, fine. I'll do 2 more full turns and now I'll split the legs in half. Take one half to one side, half to the other side, pull it all back and down, and now build a small head. And if we're let that go, if it's not exactly split, we can still divide the material. And I'll pull it back again, try to make sure it's all split. And I'll just move back up towards thorax slightly, an extra wrap or two, and that'll hold and put everything in place. If you don't have it all nicely split, then what we can do when we're done with the fly, a couple of whip finishes, whether by hand or with a tool, we can now remove 1 or 2 legs from either side of the fly to balance it out. The bugs themselves only have 3 legs a side, so we don't need to have a huge volume of legs over exaggerating the pattern. I just tore one out, I'll tear another.